Well, I appreciate you having me here today. This is a topic that has become near and dear to me. I started in my role with the Vice Provost for Academic Excellence Office about 15 months ago, and it was about 1 month after I started that the provost called down and said, "Hey, what's going on with artificial intelligence? Everybody keeps asking us for guidance from the faculty offices and the 15 academic units at the university." And of course, because I come from the Department of Learning, Design, and Technology, they said, "Paul, what's our guidance on artificial intelligence?" To which I replied, "Let me do a little digging." So that's where I'm coming from with AI. I had not had a lot of involvement with it before, but I was suddenly tasked with writing guidance for the whole of UH Manoa, which size-wise, I don't know, many of you come from some really large institutions, maybe some of them are small, but for University of Hawaiʻi, Manoa has 63% of the faculty from the entire 10 campus system. So we are 2/3 approximately of the entire state university system. And it was a little bit daunting to look at this. So I did some digging, I talked to some colleagues, I started reading, and I started getting phone calls that were referred to me by the provost from department chairs and directors saying, "Hey, would you come talk to our faculty about AI? What are we going to do? This chat GPT thing just got released and we have no idea what to do." So this took a twofold approach. One, I needed to write a guidance statement. The university system had had some discussions about whether or not a policy on AI use in academic work was warranted, and the resounding answer was no, we don't want to write a policy. Academic disciplines are far too varied, especially across our campus. It would be probably not in anyone's best interest to take a hard line one direction or another. We need to leave this to the decision making at the unit level. So that made things a little bit easier. So it turned into a guidance statement and not a policy draft. From there, I started having to collect my thoughts to go and speak to these departments that wanted somebody to come and one, orient them, two, make them feel better about what was upcoming because they were a little in shock. It's a little bit like when the World Wide Web became available and everybody suddenly thought, "Oh, my class is going to be destroyed because my students can just look up the answers anytime they want. What is happening? The sky is falling." So both my guidance statement, which you can see online if you care to, and the construct of the discussion that I went and had with multiple departments centered around 3 or 4 things. The first was to make sure that our faculty understood the university's academic dishonesty policy and how that fit into their role as faculty members. And just to summarize it, it leaves it up to individual faculty members to make decisions about the resources and the aids that are in use in classes. That's not really any different. Our academic dishonesty policy was actually pretty clear and accommodated this new advent of AI use pretty well. However, like the analogy that I like to make is if you get hit by a car and you're crossing the street in a crosswalk, it doesn't really matter that you're right. It's better to avoid the collision in the first place rather than argue about whether or not that car was abiding by the law or whether the student was abiding by the policy. So let's take a look at how we can ensure that students do. And that starts out with having a syllabus statement and the individual members taking a stance on use of AI in the work that they require in their classes. So that was the immediate first thing that I recommend to faculty is start thinking about how you are going to communicate to your students what is acceptable and in what circumstances it's acceptable. And the next point was, in order to do that, you have to familiarize yourself with some of the tools that are out there. So those were the first 3 things, which was just to recap, get yourself familiar, take a stance, communicate it to your students and discuss it with them, walk through some scenarios so they understand, and understand that you do have campus policy that backs you up. And then the final point to both the guidance and the discussions that I had with our faculty was that it's probably time to take a close look at the assignments that you have in your class and the context that they're in, and possibly redesign around the fact that this is new, right? Just like we had to redesign around the use of internet for our classes and our assignments, we have to redesign around AI. The thing that's changed now is that one of the fundamental aspects of AI is you shouldn't be using the product of an AI tool unless you have the understanding and knowledge to evaluate the product. And in order to do that, you have to learn how to do the task without the AI in the first place. So now the academic's job has been bisected into one, teach the students how to do what they need to do without the use of AI. And that probably means in a context where AI is either inaccessible or not useful, and then teach them how to do the same task with an AI tool, because in the workplace that they're probably going to be entering, they're going to be asked to use AI tools. It's the new dawn of a technology, right? Just like they have to learn how to use the internet, and we're very used to that now in their workplace and in the context that we're sending them out into. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. It's the sort of the administrative perspective, even though I also come from the academic discipline, learning, design, and technology. And the last thing I wanted to share for my 5 minutes, maybe I don't know if I've hit that time limit yet. We were asked to share an AI tool that we like, that we recommend. The one that I've been playing with recently that I'm enjoying is ChatPDF, which is chatpdf.com, where you can upload a PDF and it will let you ask questions and get answers based on the content of that PDF, which is pretty useful sometimes and not so useful other times. I've tried it with our faculty union contract, not so useful. I've tried it with an academic article on predatory journals, very useful. I could get quick answers. And it reminded me of when I was in high school and Cliff Notes were a thing, that you could actually try and absorb the real meat and potatoes from something quickly if you didn't want to read the whole thing, which in many cases is useful. In some contexts is not acceptable, but when it's useful, you can get the Cliff Notes on absolutely anything with ChatPDF. Dorothy.
Mahalo. So my journey with AI, I think, was all when ChatGPT came out. I was aware of artificial intelligence, but as a support for our system, it was really important for me to keep up really quickly. So as ChatGPT came out, I myself started being an end user, trying to use it, see how I could leverage it. I then also enrolled in a professional development workshop just so that I could speak with other colleagues across the other institutions, other higher education institutions, and then found actually that it's scary, but at the same time, I can definitely save a lot of time if I knew how to prompt or be able to utilize how to use the system, just like any other tool, right? So what we ended up doing at the university is that I worked with our instructional designers across the system, and we came up with compiling some resources because resources were coming out very quickly. We ended up creating a document where there were different categories, and then we knew that faculty were very busy. So you can actually take a look at this document if you'd like. There's the URL. We came together, and then in that document, we pulled out some of the general resources we felt faculty would find really useful. So different categories like AI and pedagogy and copyright, ethical use, policies, maybe what are some tools out there. So that seemed to be very helpful for faculty. We released this, I believe, in about maybe right before summer, right before we started the semester. And then during the fall semester, we also provided some opportunities like workshops and webinars for faculty to be able to participate in and learn about artificial intelligence and be able to actually hear from their colleagues, which they found very useful. So being able to share what other colleagues were doing with artificial intelligence was very helpful as well. If you can go to the next slide for me, that'd be great. Thanks, Mike. We also development program, which we thought was pretty innovative. We called it the Innovation Playground. So we thought faculty may potentially be not familiar with AI. There might be some who are very familiar and want to just dive in and explore. So we started an Innovation Playground time in which it was about an hour slot. Would invite any faculty at any time who were interested in coming in to join us synchronously via Zoom. Come in the first 5 10 minutes, we would share with them, like, these are some of the tools that you might find interest in exploring, but you can also explore your own tools as well. And then we would dive in and spend about, I would say, maybe 40 minutes, 30 to 40 minutes to just explore. So there are different rooms in the Zoom. We had breakout rooms. There were a room if you wanted to talk to someone about a tool and you were, you liked having conversation with others, then you would be in one of those rooms. And another room we had where it was a quiet room where if you just wanted to like explore quietly on your end, you could do that. We actually started our first session with just different tools of the breakout rooms. And then we received feedback from the faculty saying, actually, I really wanted more quiet time exploring on my own. And some faculty were like, I really actually wanted to talk to someone when I was exploring. So we ended up breaking up the rooms in a different way. And we found that pretty useful. And then at the end, we would come back together for the last 5 minutes or so. And then we would just share and debrief. And that seemed to be a really good way of being able to introduce new tools and or provide, I guess, a like a more like a informal type of environment for faculty to be able to play with the tool. So I would encourage, if you're interested in AI, or if you know a little bit about AI or don't know about AI, I would say just, take some time to play with it, because you playing with it yourself is probably one of the best tools or best strategies you could do to be able to learn about it. We can go to the next one. A lot of frequently asked questions from faculty is one, what kind of tools can I use and what are the tools out there and when should I use it and how should I use it? So I would say, actually, I use different AI tools depending on the context. There are, like, I use ChatGPT for example, for a lot of my day-to-day type of tasks to help me as an instructional designer. But I might use other tools. For example, if I am creating graphics or whatnot, then I might use other tools like Adobe Firefly or DALL-E, text to image or whatnot. So I think depending on the tools, you can definitely find the tool that works best for you. Each of the inputs and outputs, it will vary. So like I will use ChatGPT 4, I'll use Bard, I'll use Claude, but all the responses that come out based upon the same prompt can be very different, even if I feed it the same role. Like, I'm a senior instructional designer, I teach online and whatnot, and give all the information. This is a really good resource that we found. It's a crowdsourced resource in which it actually has different filters. So it'll tell you if it's a freemium tool or, educators will use it and whatnot. So you can take down that website as well. And then another question that I get asked a lot is, how are faculty and staff using AI? And so this poll actually was created by EduCause, which is an organization focused on information technology and higher education. And there's usually 4 categories that a lot of individuals, regardless if you're a faculty or not, using AI. It could be in the dream phase, the drudgery phase, design phase, or development. So, whether it's day-to-day task and you want to write an email and you want to get started with it and you just want, brainstorm ideas, or if you want to be able to actually redesign your course or design a new course that you may or may not be familiar with, you can actually have ChatGPT or one of the tools help you develop. And then, like I mentioned, there's an image to text to image. There's also text to 360. There's text to video, text to presentation tools that you can use for a lot of development work, whether you're in instructional design or faculty or just in general trying to develop or create things. And I know our earlier presenter also talked about, even coding and whatnot. So that's for me. I think we have, feel free to let me know if you have any questions or if there are any resources that you would like me to share. I work with a lot of faculty, and on those documents, there's actually different resources that you might find useful. Aloha.
Yeah. All right, Chih-Pu. Thank you. Thank you, Mike, Paul, and Dorothy. There are a lot of useful insight, but my journey with AI started with just simple problem, thinking about how can we support pre-service teachers, because during COVID or in previous time, it is really hard for pre-service teachers to practice teaching. It's hard to find a classroom for pre-service teachers to practice teaching and, just gather all the students in classroom. That's just a lot of resources. So we started to think about how can we better facilitate that process, and is there any ways that technology can help us to facilitate teacher learning? So we started to explore and our research was focused in the virtual reality. So virtual reality provided affordances for teachers to practice teaching with scalable ability. So teacher can practice anytime and anywhere they want. But the problem with our previous virtual reality was that it's not very interactive. And we think about how can we make it better interactive or more interactive for pre-service teachers. So we started to look into different technologies, and we came across large language model. And at that time, it was 2020, it was called GPT-2, and ChatGPT was the application using the GPT API or large language model to come up with the application. But GPT-2 was the large language model that we used and implemented in virtual reality. So we implemented GPT-2 and started to explore that, and we got really excited. And then ChatGPT just boom came out. So I'm not surprised about all those attention from ChatGPT, because even GPT-2, the previous version, was really exciting. So we started to implement that into the virtual reality, so pre-service teachers can practice teaching. And another problem is, how do we design those large language models that can talk specifically to pre-service teachers? So we started to adapt GPT-2 and to feed data with ambitious science teaching. So the goal for that platform is for pre-service teachers to practice ambitious science teaching. In other words, how can they take out student resources and orchestrate different student ideas in the classroom instead of just giving ideas for information students? Pre-service teachers are very familiar with just provide information and teach a lecture, but it's more challenge and ambitious to practice orchestrating ideas, because sometimes that takes pedagogical knowledge as well as content knowledge to really facilitate that process. So that's another challenge. So we implement ambitious science teaching data so that the virtual reality environment and the virtual agent in the virtual reality environment can talk specifically to pre-service teachers in the science content. And we have piloted and researched with several pre-service teachers. During that process, we found that pre-service teachers encounter challenges, of course. They are teachers, so they found it difficult to come up with ambitious science teaching practices. So we implement learning support in that learning environment, supporting pre-service teachers think about and reflect how can they implement that pedagogical practices that really orchestrate student ideas and treasure and value student thinking, so that students can articulate their ideas and discuss their ideas instead of teacher providing information. So that's another design phase of that environment. And now we're keep exploring and designing that environment. And another article found that actually GPT application in virtual reality not only support their ambitious science teaching, but also GPT are humorous. So there are humor designed in that chat GPT application, and that also facilitate pre-service teachers' pedagogical approach in terms of classroom management or how to respond to students out of nowhere ideas and integrate that into their science teaching practices. And there are a lot of future explorations in this area. For example, multimodal learning analytics. How can those virtual agents be more responsive and tailored to the pre-service teacher's input and be adaptive to where the pre-service teacher are? How can we lead pre-service teachers into more another level of pedagogical practice in that process, so that it can be applicable and scalable for pre-service teachers? And with that approach, there's another aspects that we can use that AI agent into computer science education. But the question is, when we leverage those algorithms, they contain bias or ethical considerations. They need to be adapted to local context. So designing from the beginning, we need to really incorporate the human-centered AI and the human piece in the AI technology is very important. So we need to really gather the data from the end users or the stakeholders to understand how we can design the algorithm. And there's a lot of work still to be done in this area, and I'm very excited in this area. And another application in addition to this for pre-service teacher, we're going to share a tool. It's more about in the K-12 education. I think similar to this idea, Microsoft AI also incorporate GPT language model into their products. So I see some K-12 schools started to implement Microsoft Copilot in their classroom, and teachers it really empowers teacher in their pedagogical practices. But still, how we can integrate this technology into classroom with more ethical and responsible integration is still waiting. Because when I use that Copilot or those large language model algorithms, the bias is really there. When I ask them to create a scientist, they come up with a image that is wearing a suit, and there's just some underrepresented perspective, and they replicate the bias with real humans. So there's still a lot of things to be done, and yeah, that's about my journey and my sharing.
All right, thank you, Paul, Dorothy, and Chih-Pu. I'm going to ask just a couple of questions each, and then we'll open it up to the audience to ask questions as well. So my first question is going to be for Paul. I think from an institutional perspective, and what I hear, and the question that I'm asked the most is, what do you do about cheating and plagiarism? And I know that at its core, it's a very complex, actually, area. But in terms of your perspective and the UH Manoa's perspective, how do you have that discussion with faculty about those concerns, and what are the types of recommendations that you might make to address them?
Thanks, Mike. That's actually very timely, because just in the last week, I've been fielding questions from a couple of faculty members who want to know what the university has available to them in terms of plagiarism detection software, and how to handle what they see as a concern of freshman level writing, including copy and paste kind of plagiarism. So first of all, the academic dishonesty question isn't unique to our new AI world. It's been happening for a long time. And based on those inquiries, I had just done some Q&A with other administrators around our UH system, and found 3, I think, out of our 10 campuses have some kind of license for Turnitin plagiarism checking software. There's some mixed review as to whether they're satisfied with that or not. I think it sort of depends on context and the culture of the campus. At least one campus had a license and chose to drop it because of lack of faculty interest. So we're digging a little deeper in terms of how we're going to respond to those concerns, at least at the Manoa campus, with the routine kind of copy and paste kind of plagiarism. With AI-based plagiarism, meaning trying to detect if a student has used some AI tool to generate content that was against the individual faculty members' policy for their class, which is where our academic dishonesty policy is targeted. It gives the individual faculty member the right to determine what is an authorized resource and what is not. That's a really hard space to be in. And to be honest, I don't think we have a good response, except for our focus on the redesign of assignments. You've probably heard of GPT-0 and half a dozen other kind of tools that claim to be able to detect whether content's been generated by AI. But the research that I've seen, and some of it's as recent as last month, really boils down to none of them give you a clear picture as to whether a particular instance was AI generated or not. They might give you a histogram that weighs the evidence for and against, and gives you, these are the factors that make it probable that it was AI generated, but nothing that would give a faculty member or a judicial affairs officer a clear case to walk up and say, Dorothy, this was AI generated, and my policy in the class was that you can't use it for this instance. So I'm not sure what good those tools do, other than try and back up suspicions that you might have generated anyway. So to revisit the redesign concept, in our AI guidance, in many of the materials Dorothy's team has developed for the faculty, we focus on strategies for rethinking assignments that might make AI less useful, might make it not useful at all. Anyway, to reduce the likelihood that a student could simply use an AI tool to generate what they should have been doing on their own. And some of those are to scaffold assignments. You break a writing project up into multiple assignments that you have to turn in. Some of them, it may be perfectly valid and acceptable per that faculty member to use AI. Maybe you should use AI to help you generate your thesis statement for a paper that you're going to want to work on. I use ChatGPT for those kinds of things. I want to brainstorm titles for a workshop. I want to brainstorm topics for a presentation. I'll use an AI tool for that. Maybe that's where the faculty member says this is acceptable. Turn that in first. Now let's build your thesis paragraph, maybe your outline. Those are separate things that you need to turn in, and maybe claim how and when you used AI for generating that. It's a little unfortunate. I was pulled out of the classroom based on my new role right at the time AI came out. So one of the strategies I would have used, and I'm still looking for people to tell me if this works, is to build those assignments into Google Docs so that I can examine the version history. And you can label the versions based on the scaffolded steps that the paper is supposed to take, right? Here's my thesis statement. Now I developed the first paragraph. Here's the outline. Here I've fleshed out my argumentation in those 3 body paragraphs, and here's the conclusion. Those can all be separate. And I can look at the development of that paper over time using the version history. Somebody can tell me if that works or not, because that's where I would go were I still in the classroom. There are tools like, I think the plugin for Google Chrome is called Draftback, that you can have a student record essentially their writing while they're doing it, so that if you are curious as to whether or not they copied and pasted a big chunk in there, that you would actually be able to see it. But other strategies like using for source material for an assignment, something that's not available on the internet, requiring assignments to be turned in some other media format besides text. Is it a podcast that you want them to turn in? That's kind of hard to use ChatGPT other than to organize the podcast, which might be okay. But their original work might have to be turned in an audio file. Anyway, there are other strategies, and I would encourage you to explore some of those. We've outlined some of those in our guidance statement from the Office of the Vice Provost. I guess that's all I wanted to say. But
That's
thanks.
pretty good. Thank you. Very practical understanding and viewpoint. So my next question's for Dorothy. What type of initiatives are available system-wide to support AI in education? And do you have any examples of what the teams or faculty did as a result of some of those initiatives?
Sure. So mention some of the webinars that we provide. They're all archives. If you're interested, you can visit the University of Hawaiʻi UH Online Innovation Center or www.hawaii.edu/UHOIC. We have all of the webinars recorded and archived, so you can take a look at it. One of our last webinars was AI and authentic assessment. So that one was a really good one in which some of our faculty and specialists talked about how, what Paul was saying, scaffolding, how do you actually encourage students to show their work and show their learning versus just the snapshot of the final product? Because if you're asking students to show their learning in different media formats and whatnot, then there will be less of the ability, right, to plagiarize and whatnot. Also, in general, I think when I speak with faculty, a lot of the students for workforce readiness, they're going to be asked to use and leverage artificial intelligence tools. So the ability to not only learn how to use the tools, but the ability to know how to identify the hallucinations or the errors, and the ability to utilize critical thinking skills to be able to evaluate the output that comes out from these tools is really important, especially for our students, right, in our system. So those are things that we really try to work on with faculty. We started an AI Explorer badge that we're offering to faculty and staff who are interested in documenting their artificial intelligence journey. So we just started that. I think everyone who is interested, we have a cohort of about maybe 40 faculty and staff across our system who decided to jump in and sign up, and they're going to be documenting their learning and their journey through a AI action plan in which we have a template online in which they'll download and then they'll explore a tool. They'll either incorporate into their learning. They can play around with the tool or use something practical with the tool and be able to document that aligned to standards. And then we'll be able to actually give them a badge of completion that is a verified University of Hawaiʻi badge at the end of that process. And we actually plan to incorporate a showcase in April of 2024. So that's upcoming. And we provided choice for our faculty so they can either show their learning through a asynchronous format through a video or whatnot, and or a podcast or others, and or they can come and join in on that Zoom session and share with other colleagues who will be invited to that showcase session. So that's something our team is also looking forward to seeing what's happening out there in our system besides what we hear about.
Outstanding. Maybe we could do like an interpretive dance.
That could be.
Okay. My last question is for Chih-Pu, and this is more a teacher at K-12 related. So what kind of recommendations with your knowledge would you make for K-12 schools in their technology use or implementation of AI, maybe whether for classroom or professional development?
Great. Thank you for the question, Mike. I think for that question, I think it can echo previous panelists, Paul and Dorothy's responses. Teachers really need to understand the AI technology. So be speaking from teachers' professional development and how teachers understand the technology so they don't fear it and they don't want to ban it. We hear a lot of stories about New York, maybe schools in New York that are thinking about banning GPT in their classrooms. That's probably because they don't understand the power that AI can provide, or they understand the power of AI can provide, but they think the challenges outweigh the affordances. So more teacher professional development opportunities I think is necessary, and how teachers can use that into their classrooms. I think that's one aspect. And another aspect is not only use AI, but also develop AI literacy, because in the future, the next generation students, they will be equipped with AI literacy and AI knowledge and skills for them to be successful in the society or in their workplace. So I think that's another aspect, developing teachers' competencies and skills and comfort level to educate students about AI and to use AI in the classroom. I think that's the two aspects, but assessment is also very important, not only in higher education, but in K-12 classroom. And another point about using that in K-12 classroom is this AI developmentally appropriate for students, because students are still developing their ideas and their cognitive schema, if I put it that way. So AI may have bad influence. So the gate really need to protect students about the negative influence of AI. So I think that's my answer to that.
Wonderful. So I think in general, one of the things that I'm hearing overall is just a push to demystify AI, to utilize it, and maybe reflection as a part of that process of really thinking about, what were the positives and what were the challenges of using it, and then learning from each other, I think is key. We have just about 5 minutes audience questions as well. So if anyone would raise their hand, and then I believe we have Nick to go around to provide the mic for anyone that has a question. So anyone have a question for the panel while we have the panel? We have one in the back. Thank you. You're on.
Thanks very much for an interesting panel. I would be very interested to know, for those of you who, I forget which one of you said it, design assignments that sort of can't be responded to by AI. I have never succeeded in doing that, despite many valorous attempts at providing students with some stimulus material and say, what do you think about this? Read this news story. What do you think? Apply this course concept to it. And they will still upload the news story into the AI and ask it the questions. I I would like to know if anybody's ever succeeded. And if so, how?
I'm going to respond just because I think that's a really interesting problem, and I think everybody has it. Again, I haven't been in the classroom since the advent of ChatGPT. It just happened to correspond with moving over to a more administrative post. But a couple of comments, mostly is that I think focusing on those breaks, like you can't ask ChatGPT necessarily to produce a podcast for you. I know that is a different challenge to grade, right? It changes things, but when you think through the means in which the AI has difficulty producing something for them, and also those areas that AI just isn't good at. AI doesn't ideate. It's not creative. It doesn't do critical analysis and decision making. It repeats. It scans. It scrapes. It reorganizes. It filters and spits back a coherent response. Right? It does it so well that it seems magical, but that's all it does. There are human tasks that AI can't produce, and we're just now starting to think about how do we test students for those things, right?
I think we have time for
Follow up, sorry, by saying that the students who do this don't do well. So, I do give them some, ideation type things, and they're very bad.
You're making me think of another analogy, which is my doctoral dissertation, right? It was a long time ago. I did use a word processor though. Doing the literature analysis is something that AI could do in a heartbeat, right? It took me months and lots of copying and highlighting and note taking and synthesis and reorganizing. That was the half of my dissertation. But had I not done that myself, I would have failed at the dissertation defense, right? Because you can't query me and ask me to defend anything about the dissertation if I hadn't actually done that underlying work. It also probably couldn't have come up with the concept for my study, right? It couldn't have collected the data. It couldn't have also done the statistical analysis and drawn conclusions. So there are aspects of that large project that AI would have spit out in a heartbeat, and there are aspects that it completely cannot adapt to.